gave me enough for the breakfast.
Isn't that
I
something?
think of that now, she's doing in a sense.
So that was at Ned of the Hill, wasn't it? I remember you telling me something about
But
it.
if you want that history now, I'll give it to you too. I got it from my grandmother. Ned of the Hills was an Edward Ryan from Anacarty. Now, he was studying for the priesthood. He was a man of 6'4", and it was in France he was studying for the priesthood. And he used to come home on his holidays, and of course come by train to the junction. And when he come to the junction, then that time there was no transport, only a walk. And he had to walk from the junction to Anacarty. But there was an old lady living in a place called Newtown, below Kappa White. And he used to call to see her and get a cup of tea that would help him on the road. It was sort of a halfway house. And when he got to that, this day coming home, he found her on the side of the road and all her belongings beside her, and she crying. And he asked her what happened. And a bailiff had come and evicted her out of her little house. And the bailiffs were inside. He went in and attacked the bailiffs and killed one of them. And of course had to go on his keep and them. And where he hit for was for Hollyford, where you were hitting for now today. And he came to Hollyford, and the money was there to him, still there to him. And he came to Hollyford to cousins of his Dwyers. And in Hollyford there was caves there from the time of the copper mines. There were terrible big copper mines in Hollyford times, and the miners used to sleep in these caves. And he slept in this, he used to sleep in this cave. And the Gallopin Hogan, Sarsfield and Gallopin Hogan was his men.
I remember him all
that
right.
destroyed the train in Limerick. He was living in the woods, you know, on the mountains up here, on his keep and away from, you know, highwaymen. And when young Ned the Hills came, he joined up with them, but he wouldn't join there. He was an honest sort of he wasn't a highwayman at all. And he joined up with them, made him a present of a horse. And he used to travel the hills then with the horse and sleep on his keep and all the time. And this day he came back, and who he met was a lady on horseback. They used to come on horseback, you know, traveling around these mountains. And her horse bolted and got away from her. And he followed the horse and brought the horse back and said to her, "You shouldn't travel these places without a guide." And she said, "Will you be my guide?" And he said, "Yes." And he took her for that day right through the hills and brought her back to where they started from. And she said, "Thank you very much, you're a gentleman." And he said to her, "If you knew who I was, you wouldn't call me a gentleman. I'm Ned of the Hills, the highwayman." Well, she said, "It was my father that put that £100 on my head." That's what it was, £100 of the bounty on his head. "It was my father put that on your head. And when I go back, I'll get him to a reprieve for you." So she went back and got a reprieve for him. But there was a man, I can't think offhand now what the name was, the landlord that was in that area. And the head man was her father. But there was an agent working for him that wanted Ned of the Hills. He didn't want this reprieve for him at all. So he kept the reprieve under cover for 2 or 3 days. And in the meantime, Ned the Hills' first cousin, a Dwyer man, got to him, cut off his head, and took it away to collect his £100. And when he got there, the reprieve was there, and he was told there was no money for the head. And he started then back again from Cashel. Maud of Maudmount was the name of the head man, like, you know, that was there, the agent. And he had to return and bring his head back in a bag. And on the way coming, when he came to a place called Curraheen, he buried the head there. And the body then was taken to a Protestant churchyard in Doon. It was in Doon he was buried. And years afterwards, the head was found, and they were excavating somewhere around Curraheen. and the Dwyer family, his own first cousin that cut his head off. And the Dwyers then came home, and they even gave all particulars about it, this and that, but they didn't mention the name Dwyer. But the man that cut his head off was a man called Paul the Peddler.
See.
That's what was in the book. And the head was discovered, and they put up a monument. The monument is there to the present day, in memory of Ned of the Hills.
That's down in the churchyard here?
No,
Was it?
no, the monument is over in Hollyford.
Oh, I see,
Hollyford up
yes.
in Corrigeen, the top of the hill. Because he went from Hollyford across the hills to Cashel. And then on the way back, of course, we're all walking that time. And he had to bring the head away, and I suppose he got tired of bringing it. When he got halfway, they buried it above the side of the hill.
Isn't that something?
And they travelled, they were big people. Now, we had belonged to it. And why they were classed big people at that time, hundreds of years ago, is they had 2 long cars and 2 pairs of horses. 2 pairs, you know.
Made them...
And nobody, that made them, you know, aristocracy in them times. And they got us, they killed the landlord, and they were going on their keep and they're born of Ramini, that's up in Rare Cross side. They're still there, families of them. And when they got to do, and one horse died, and a horse couldn't be replaced at that time. So that family then of the Oldens was my grandmother's people, and they stayed and they took 70 acres from Kilbride. If you look down, they are now to a high hill, that's where they originated from. And they took 70 acres there, and £1 an acre. That's the time to sort of rent it. That's the way it used to be from the landlords that time. And they had 70 acres. And the landlord, the real landlord, was a man that was living the life of a hermit, never came outside the door, you know. It was in his, in fact, it was travelling the family yet, the same family. And a brother of his then came around and collected the rent. And the £70 from Nolan and Donohoe's were the 2 parties that had the land. They very, very big farm still down there. And collected the rent. And he came out of his box then, he was a hermit, living the life of a hermit, and told them that he didn't give permission to the brother to collect the rent because he was after absconding with it. And they had to turn around then and pay the rent again. And all the money the Nolans could scrape up was £10, and they were left with 10 acres. And the Donohoes couldn't scrape up any money, and they were evicted. So that must be the history now that we were talking about.
That must have been a while back, yeah.
Yes.
Talking about that.
And even the place down there to this day, there's low-lying fields there, and they still go by the name of Connor's Bog. And Connor Nolan was the name of the man that took the place originally. Yeah. Well, that's the thing I came across now recently in a book. What's the highest mountain in County Tipperary? Galtymore.
Galtymore, that's right.
Isn't it?
Yeah, okay.
Well, what's the highest mountain in County Limerick?
Galtymore.
You know that?
No.
The boundary,
Yes.
the boundary, the peak of Galtymore and the Limerick Tipperary boundary passes through the centre of the peak, so that you have
The highest one.
Galtymore in Limerick the highest, and Galtymore, Tipperary the highest again.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
That's strange now.
Now what you're looking at now is straight from outside the house, and the hill right up there at the very top is called Nicker Hill. Now Mick has just told us that he has looked into the history books, and that is the only known site in Ireland where a volcano actually erupted. In that little bump in the centre is what was thrown out, because recently they went to build some properties in or around the area, and when they started to do the foundations, the instrument they put down to test the soundness of the soil actually disappeared. Then they found the caverns, and then they went down into the up pit from the volcano. So there.
And it always went by the name of the Bright Lake. And when they had that done and the water drained, they were able to drain the all, and it still goes by the name of the Dead River to the present day. It runs so slowly. And when they had that done and the people came, they dried up the lake, White Lake, to call. And the people came to live there, but they changed the name then from the White Lake to Cool Barn. Cool Barn is the Irish White Lake. That's that area there.
View of the convent, and I've just been talking to my uncle Mick, and he's been telling me a little bit of history about this huge building here. The local priest came in to Doon and was determined to make his mark, so he built the huge church down the town and this monastery and the school. The problem is that at that time people around here were just going through the aftermaths of the famine and were literally dying for the want of food in their homes and on the side of the road, and yet this fella still utilised the money that he had in his possessions to build this monstrosity.